Well, hello everyone. I am live here with a friend, Bad Girl is what she goes by. And I will let her introduce herself because we're going to be talking about transgender and DID related things. So I will let her introduce herself.
Hi guys, I'm Bad Girl and I run Bad Girl's Bitch blog. Like Autumn, I'm a trans woman. I've been transitioning for 2 years, and also like Autumn, I have dealt with dissociative identity disorder. And on my channel, you'll see documentation of both of these, but as well as some fun things such as video game reviews, a series called Bad Girls Rants where I complain about relevant things, and lots of other fun subcategories.
Great. Yeah, I've pretty much found her through a video that she made saying how I was really helpful to her and how she really liked my videos, and we just began talking from there. And I'm happy to be able to have her on here because I think we can definitely offer a lot of insight with transgender as well as DID, dissociative identity disorder, for people who don't know. So I guess my first question for you is, at what point in your life did you realize that you were transgender and that you had altered personality?
Well, I mean, it's kind of a long story. They kind of tie in together. The DID definitely came first. It goes way back, and back when, of course, I was a little boy, and I was growing up in a very abusive and hostile environment. I was suffering emotional, verbal, mental, and physical abuse from both my father and my older brother. And I felt very alone, so, I created an imaginary friend, and this imaginary friend was everything that I wanted. So pretty much this little boy created an imaginary friend who was everything that he wasn't, but wished that he was. And so, like, for some examples where he secretly wished that he was born a girl. So, I mean, at the time, he had no idea what transgender meant or even that the term existed, but he always liked girl things and felt like he'd be happier as a girl. Therefore, his imaginary friend was a girl. And also, he wanted to be brave. He was scared all the time, lived in a constant state of fear. And, he just wanted to be a fighter. He was too scared and too, just that environment just left him feeling defenseless. So he wanted a friend who could defend for him. And that's how it started. So this friend at first was just in his head, this little girl talking to this little boy, comforting him and saying mean things about the people that are saying mean things to him, kind of like get the balance. And, just over time as he grows up, this presence kind of becomes more and more self-aware, and through his eyes observes the world and how it treats him, because, this imaginary friend of his knows that that he is a sweetheart and just wants to help people, and here's the rest of the world taking advantage of that and just hurting him and abusing him. And through this observation, his friend became very angry at the way things were going. And as he grew older still, into his early 20s, entering an abusive relationship with a cis woman who turned out to be transphobic, but we'll get there. But so just the imaginary friend over time grew angrier and thus more powerful. So the emotion that was feeding this imaginary friend was anger, until finally at age 25, the boy, now a man, became a fan of Lady Gaga, and the words and music and message of Lady Gaga helped him. It gave him the bravery to come out as, hey, I think I'm a girl, and later discovering the term transgender, hey, I'm transgender. And his entire life was turned upside down. He lost a whole lot of friends. His fiance just became 10 times more abusive than before, and so did his family. And it got to a point where his fiance was getting physical with him, and since nobody really paid attention to that because it was a woman abusing a man, so people just think that's funny. So eventually it got to a point where the fiance was physically abusing him again, and and this is being real here, I am the imaginary friend. I got so furious. At this point, I was powerful enough to seize control. My anger and fury at the world just got so powerful that I forcefully seized control of his body and struck her back. And that's kind of that. At the moment, it was just a second. It was just a second that I was able to do it. And then when I receded back, I realized, that was me. That wasn't him. That wasn't me through him. That was actually straight up me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I realized that I'm not an imaginary friend anymore. This is something else. And through the research, me and I call him my twin brother. Me and my twin brother, we discovered dissociative identity disorder and what it is, and realized that's what we are. And just kind of did further research, and came to decide that that's what's going on. And do you want me to stop there? And
Yeah, I do have a question. So you're pretty much saying that your DID and essentially transgenderism was caused by this past abuse and trauma that you went through.
Yes.
Okay. So would you say then, if you had never had that childhood of the abuse, that you wouldn't have this altered personality that has taken over right now that I'm speaking with, and you essentially would possibly still be a male? Do you
It's hard
do you
to
think
say.
that?
That's hard. That's a world that's difficult for me to imagine because it's a world where I do not exist at all.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe, possibly, but it's just really tough for me to picture it because this is the role that I've played the whole way.
Okay. So then, for other people who do have dissociative identity disorder, and perhaps one of their altered personalities is transgender, which I have definitely known some people who have had that as the case. If that personality were to ultimately become dominant, just as you, for example, becoming dominant, and they transition, what would happen then if this other personality were to re-emerge and come back, and it's like, well, I'm not transgender, why have you transitioned? Because some people theorize that it is related, being transgender is related to abuse and trauma that someone went through, and it is a dissociative type of disorder. Not for everyone, of course. I definitely have talked about different ways, but certain aspects of it can be.
Absolutely. And I think, yes, I do think that my personal case of DID does tie in with being a transgender and now transsexual. I have mentioned this on my own blog, but I'll say it again here. I feel like something I've noticed about other DID cases is that frequently they would create many different personalities, like, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe more than that personalities, each have an individual quality that they need. Whereas in my case, he just took the whole package and slapped it into one.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just two. It was the original and one alter.
Okay.
And I feel like, I guess just in situations where it's, a group of alters, I guess it'd be more difficult for one to seize dominance over the others just because, they only serve that one little purpose. But in my case, I had everything that he wanted, and he created me to be stronger than him. That was his intent from the start. So I guess just by having all the needed qualities that he was looking for, that and being the only one in the body besides the original, that just kind of gave me the free space to get stronger and eventually take over.
Okay. Yeah, that is very interesting. And I remember you mentioning that your case of DID, you've never heard of anyone else essentially merging into an alter and becoming that, versus most of the time you've heard about people merging into the host identity, the original one, the one that created all these alters and that it split off from. So what do you what what do you think that reason was for a you that you have essentially become this alter personality?
It took a while for me to figure this out. It was a difficult process, and it wasn't something that I was prepared for, but it did happen. So yeah, part two of my long winding story is that ultimately, transgender and being two separate identities, I was hostile and violent and angry because that's just what I was spawned from. So in some situations, he was better to have around. In other situations, I was better to have around. And I guess over time, we kind of learned to work together, kind of like at the time, not necessarily emerge, but just kind of like both taking the wheel, I guess. And that was working for a while when we were just simply transgender. But then when we made the decision together to take the extra step and become transsexual, undergo the hormone medication, that's when things started to change. I noticed that I was in control of the body more often. I noticed that I was getting feelings for the first time because I didn't give a care about anyone else in the world because nobody ever cared about him. That was my mode of thinking. I was just angry and vengeful. But then I noticed I started caring about people, and I'm like, wait, what's going on? And that's when he told me that he's made the decision to merge into me and give me the gift of his life. And that was very, very difficult because that's not what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And for the longest time, it took me a year to come to terms with this following the merge of the original into the alter, what you see before you,
Mm-hmm.
and just experiencing the original's emotions of like desire to care for others. And just, it was just such a difficult mashup of like this sweetheart mashing up with this heartless. And just, I'm trying to like leave bad words out of this best I can. You know me, Autumn. Like I'd be using like all kinds of words right now, but I'm trying to like, okay, gotta substitute that one and that one. But anyway, it was just a really difficult merge because I wasn't ready for it. I didn't want to say goodbye to him, and I wasn't ready to cope with these kind of emotions for the first time. But a year later, I've come to terms with it because someone very inspiring and special helped me look at it in a different light. And pretty much, I think how I look at it now is he created me as a child because I'm the person that he always wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
And by merging into me, he is now the person he's always wanted to be because he is now me.
Yes. Yeah,
And
that's very interesting.
Full circle. That is some full circle stuff right there.
Yeah, because it took you a while to come to that realization that, he wasn't dead. He just merged into you. He became who you are now. He's still there in essence, but yeah, it's. I think a lot of people certainly have a hard time coming to that conclusion and thinking, well, this aspect of myself, it's kind of gone now. This ultra personality, they're gone, they're dead, or whatever. And regardless of if it's an ultra personality or not, we have certain traits about our personality that are just always there, and they become part of us, or we just learn to accept that. And I think your acceptance of this and what has happened has been I would say it has really helped you a lot become much more confident with what's been going on and not feel so upset with this past abuse that you went through. Because I remember you made a video about this, and at the end you were saying that you forgive all those people who had abused you and who did you harm. And for so many people who go through abuse and trauma, it is so hard to do that because you just want to hate those people.
I do want to specify something about that video. Before the merge was complete, like I realized it was happening, but he wasn't entirely gone. He told me, he requested me to pass the message that he forgives everyone that abused him.
Yes.
And just being upset, you're not ready to accept the whole merge thing. I was still angry at everyone that abused him. I was calling them murderers. And, I was saying he committed suicide because of all of you. And so I withheld that message against his wishes. But now a year later in that video, I finally came to terms and I delivered the message. So more specifically, he forgives all of his abusers. And
that's even better.
And I was passing on his message after withholding it for so long.
Yes. Well, I think that's an amazing thing. And I certainly can relate to a degree with this story because I remember back when I was very insecure with myself, just a few years back when I started making videos, a whole bunch of people were essentially saying all these hateful, nasty things to me online. And it would really get to me. I would really obsess over it. And it was very bad. And it got to the point where the one that was always upset, this host personality that was always so upset and was very sensitive to these things, it felt as though due to one incident, it felt as though that host personality killed herself, essentially, committed suicide because of all the problems. And it was very difficult for a few days or weeks after that until I kind of learned to, not to be so focused on that. So that was a very temporary thing, but definitely for you, it was many, many years long that this happened, that you had felt that. It wasn't just, a few weeks. So I can imagine just how difficult that would have been, especially just with my own experience, just briefly with that. And it feels like you're just kind of lost and you just feel very angry at those people.
Exactly.
But whenever you project anger, you don't receive any positivity in return. So it's always good to forgive and just let it be and just forget it. But a lot of people can't really do that. So very happy that you could. Oh, I think you froze. Are you there? Well, I think she froze everyone. Sometimes this happens a little bit. She freezes.
I'm back, sorry.
You're back? You're still frozen.
Just the antenna, sorry.
Okay. Technical issues. Okay, yeah,
So
your video is not back. It's just a profile picture now.
Oh, should I do it again?
You could disable your video and re-enable it. Maybe that'll help.
Okay.
Yeah. Everyone watching, sorry for the technical problems. This is all live.
Now?
Yes, you're back.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry guys. It's just my PC runs on wireless, and I have like an antenna picking up the signal, and every now and then it just drops the signal, which usually is an issue. I'm just like browsing, but during a live stream, it is an issue, so I apologize.
Yes. Okay. So now, regarding the abuse and the negativity, do you ever get any negativity online saying that you're a fake, that you're a fraud for, experiencing this made-up disorder, as a lot of people claim that it is?
Actually, not really, but that's mainly because, DID was never really a primary focus of my blog. My channel is, like half of it is sentimental, the other half is just being funny. It's just fun things like all the reviews that I do. And just not having that many subscribers, as of right now, I have a little more than 600. And so for the duration of my 5 years, it's just, I guess I didn't have a large enough of an audience to draw in that negativity, which I guess in some ways is good, but in other ways it's bad just because it means I don't really have an audience. So, now 5 years later, my channel is finally starting to gain momentum, but, the whole process is done with. So all they can do now is just go back to the videos I've already made about it and say what they want. But honestly, I have gotten a lot of negativity about being trans.
Okay.
Especially in my early videos where admittedly I wasn't very good at makeup because I had just started. But honestly, the best thing I feel like is the best thing to do is just the really nasty ones like kill yourself or whatever else, or the ones that use derogatory terms like tranny or whatever else. We can say that because that's our word, but people who are not,
we're a
not
bunch of trannies.
It's our word, okay? But yeah, so the really bad ones, I just delete and block them. But sometimes ones that are just kind of like mildly bad, it's like, why is your makeup, oh my God, your makeup's so terrible. Do you think that's good? And I'm like, no, because I made this video in 2012. Of course it's not good. Look at my new stuff and you'll see how much better it is. You know?
Okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of, that's kind of how I handle it.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely good to handle it that way. 'Cause a lot of people obsess over it, including myself when I initially started making videos. And, it started, I didn't really get affected by the transgender comments. It was mostly people discrediting, number one, my experiences, my past trauma, and my past issues, which people still do. I don't really care now because I don't really look at the comments. But, I hear every day, fake, you're faking, you're making things up for attention. What's another one? You are insulting to people who actually have this disorder. Yet they don't actually even understand it themselves, because the rest of their comment essentially, it's like, well, you have some misconceptions that I've talked about. And not only that, there are certainly a lot of people who do have DID who have been outspoken against me, saying that I spread a lot of misinformation. And, I think those are the ones that definitely affect me the most, because it's like I'm here trying to educate and help people overcome their problems on their own. I'm not so fixated on, here's the disorder, here's all the problems with it, here's the problems that I face every single day because of this and that. No, I'm going to focus on how I'm going to get better, how I'm going to do better. So I think a lot of people see that as, you can't get rid of the disorder because there's no way to get rid of it. And I definitely agree with that to an extent. With any kind of disorder or problem, you're going to have it and you're going to learn how to cope with it, but there's no, cure per se. But that doesn't mean you can't be fully functional to the point where it's like it's no longer impacting your life, where it's essentially cured. So a lot of people look at that like, well, no, you need to do this and that. It has to be a certain way in order for you to do it. So I'm very glad that you haven't heard that, but as you said, perhaps maybe that's why, because you haven't talked an enormous amount about the DID. Because it is very interesting to see some people's comments, both people who are uneducated on it and people who have it, saying the same type of thing. But then there are other people who do, understand what I went through and understand how I overcame it. So, yeah, very interesting. So, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I feel like in that situation, you can make an attempt to educate them better. Be like you said, you mentioned how somebody will say, touch on things or complain about things that you've already touched on in the video that they're commenting on,
Yeah.
So in that situations, I feel like constructive criticism goes a little further.
Okay.
And just being like, hey, I kind of get where you're coming from, but I also kind of debunk it in the video that you're commenting on. Can you watch the rest of it? And, I definitely encourage anyone who wants to understand DID or any mental disorder better to just go, the internet is vast. There's so much information on it. Just do some searches, just get some research in there and try to understand it best you can yourself before you start going criticizing other people and telling them or deciding if they are real or fake, But honestly, in the end, that's not really your place to say because everybody knows themselves best. You have not been inside of this person's head. You don't know what happens in there on a daily basis. So really, it's not your place to call somebody a fake because on the internet, you don't know them.
Good. Very good words. So now, in regard to, as we briefly touched on a little bit ago, DID and transgender as a mental, this mental disorder that you experienced. Now, obviously, we classify dissociative identity disorder as a mental disorder. But what are your thoughts on transgender being a mental disorder? Because a lot of people say it is, a lot of people say it isn't, and I have very mixed views on it, which I have discussed regarding, in one way, I think it is, in another way, I don't think that it is, because it's, a lot of people make the argument that gender dysphoria is the mental disorder aspect. Okay, I can definitely agree with that. I definitely see that as a mental disorder because of all the issues that happen, the depression, the anxiety, all the other issues that come about with gender dysphoria. But I also think that being transgender can be directly a cause of a mental disorder, as you kind of touched on earlier, but you weren't really sure about how if maybe perhaps if you weren't abused in the past and you didn't have this dissociative identity disorder, who knows how any kind of transgender related thing would come about. So that's very interesting as well. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I also have mixed views about that because, I've done a lot of research on gender dysphoria. And I know there has been scientific studies, where they perform like a brain scan of like a cis man, a cis woman, and then they perform brain scans of like, trans people. And they can, just by looking at these scans of the brain and, they can decide, and by studying them, they can decide this is a male brain, this is a female brain. And so, and another way to look at it, I guess, is the brain is kind of like the motherboard of the human body. So in that sense, seeing how gender dysphoria all originates in the brain, in that sense, then yeah, I guess it could be a mental thing. And, since in the sense of gender dysphoria, the gender of the brain does not match the gender of the body.
Yes.
And so it's disorderly. So I guess a mental disorder isn't an entirely incorrect label.
Mm-hmm.
But, I feel like it's also kind of a different league from your traditional disorders like schizophrenia, DID, or even like depression. I feel like it's kind of a class of its own just because I feel like, okay, I'm trying to like shape words here, but I don't do very. This is why I edit my videos, guys. This is why I edit my videos, okay? But yeah, so in some sense, I guess I do agree that it kind of is a mental disorder, but I don't feel like that should be seen as a bad thing.
Yeah, because it often is.
Yeah, it's not a negative thing. Okay, it's not something that you should just go to therapy and have that therapist make you not be transgender anymore and you'll be fine. It doesn't work that way. Gender dysphoria is not a curable disease as what some people think. The only way to fix gender dysphoria is to make the body match the brain. And that's why we make the decision to transition.
Yes, I certainly agree with that. And how I put it into perspective for people who solely think it is a mental disorder, because there are people who say, who classify it on the same level as, bipolar and schizophrenia, where you can essentially fix it by other means. And of course, I wish there was another way to alleviate, the problems, but there isn't at this time. But another way that I tend to look at it, and it goes along with what you were saying about the brains being different. I kind of see it as as similar to like an intersex condition, in that an intersex person is born with a variation of male and female genitals. So perhaps there is, a child that's born who has this, female and male anatomy, and the parents essentially have surgery to make that child into a girl. So then when the child gets older, it's like, well, this child wasn't never meant to be a girl. It was actually meant to be a boy. So that kind of shows right there, well, it's not just physical. It's not just what you were born with. It also has to do with your brain. So if your brain is different, it's not matching, then I think a lot of that transition that an intersex person has to do is very similar to a transsexual person transitioning, having to, well, I have female anatomy for the most part, and I have to change that to male because I have to do, the hormones and stuff like that. And I think it can be very similar. And I think that kind of proves right there that it's not, 100% a mental disorder. I personally only classify it as strictly a mental disorder if it was caused by, like trauma or abuse or something like that, kind of what we talked about earlier. Then I would classify that more as a mental disorder, but that doesn't solely mean that that's what that is caused by as well. There could be something else contributing, and then that trauma and abuse is just what brings it about, that need to transition. So it's a lot to really think about and discuss. And I think a lot of people who talk negatively about it just think one thing and not have an open mind about, well, maybe there's other causes.
And that's what, separates. I feel like what it comes down to is whether or not the person has had their spiritual awakening. Because a spiritual awakening just means you kind of look around and you realize you've been looking at the world around you in a very linear way, and start opening your mind to, other points of view, other lifestyles. And that's when, it starts to, I think that's what it comes down to, is that these people who are so quick to, say that, there's something wrong with trans people and whatever else, they just have not given themselves the opportunity to look around and think, maybe my opinion isn't the only one out there. Maybe I should actually, listen to other people's opinions and, kind of just take a step back and analyze my opinions and compare it to theirs. And there may be a middle ground here. But people who are just so closed off to that, just so closed-minded, just want, my opinion is right, everyone else's is wrong, they're not going to go anywhere. And I feel like that's kind of what's slowing us down as a species, as humanity. I've said this in some of my videos, and there's so much hate based on, just personal opinions, based on politics, based on religion. We could really be advancing our technology right now. We could be so much further as a race. We could probably be harvesting our entire planet's energy right now, but the Dark Ages has slowed us down. If you look at like the Stone Age and how fast we were evolving, but then, the Dark Ages came where religion came into the picture and whatever else, and just it's just been such a weight on humanity ever since then. So if we just kind of like accept, okay, you got your opinions, I got mine, you got your religion, I got mine, it's all cool. Let's make planet Earth into a space station that is capable of time travel. You know,
Interesting. Yeah, very, very, very interesting. That's good. Now, before we get into the Q&A section here, there's one more question. So everyone, get your questions ready after this one. Now, the one question here, and I'm sure, I don't know how many people may ask this. I know I get questions about this all the time on my videos, in my streams. So I'm just going to ask it now. What do you think about media representation of dissociative identity disorder and the movie Split? So many people ask that.
I actually have not seen the movie Split.
Same here. I've never seen it.
I really should though, because this isn't the first time I've heard about it. I have seen Multiplicity, but I guess it's not the exact same thing. That's cloning. That's not it. That's different. But
Okay.
I don't know. It's just I really don't see any representation of DID in media, and what there is just very little of it. Like I know there was a sitcom dealing with DID. And I remember seeing a trailer for it. Is that Split?
No, Split is a movie. I forget what show you're thinking of. People have asked me about that show as well. I'm sure someone in the comments here will mention that. Isn't it a woman with these multiple personalities?
Yeah, and like you kind of see it from her internal perspective. Like you see like four of her like conversing. It's like it kind of like makes a literal depiction of what is going on in her head.
Okay.
And I remember seeing a trailer for this series.
United States of Terror.
What?
Someone just said United States of Terror.
United States of Terror. Okay, now that I know the title,
Okay.
I will go look into it because I saw the trailer and then I heard nothing else about it. So, yeah, I guess what efforts have been made to bring DID into media just have kind of been hushed. I mean, maybe not intentionally, maybe they just never got noticed, like the United States of Terror. And I feel like people like you and I, Autumn, we should, continue, even though we've both gotten over our personal cases, should continue, spreading the word about it for people who are still presently dealing with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think over time, more of an awareness can be drawn to dissociative identity disorder as for what it is, because I think like its name was changed as of like 1993 from multiple personality disorder.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very gradual, slow process as far as bringing attention to DID, and I feel like people like us, with the voices we have, can speed that up.
Mm-hmm. And what are your words to anyone who is dealing with this disorder and is having a hard time coping? What words of advice do you have?
Your alters are there for a reason. Your alters, even though they're separate from you for right now, you will find out later that they complete you. And you may end up merging. You may not. You guys just may end up working together, just sharing the steering wheel. And if you do merge, it might be a merge into the original. It might be a merge into the alter. But however it turns out, you will be a better person in the end because you will have all the best qualities of everybody involved in that little party. And it will be meant to be. Everything happens for a reason. You have these alters for a reason. They will better you with time.
I think that was wonderful, wonderful, encouraging words. So that was great. Thank you. Thank you for expressing that. So if anyone has any questions for us, please ask them now. We will answer a few questions here if anyone wants to touch on anything. It can be about, it can be about anything really that you want to ask. So, all right. So here's one already. Hang on. Okay.
Can't see the chat window, by the way. If you guys are saying, "Hey, bad girl," I'm sorry, I can't see it.
Has anyone ever been cured from DID?
Well, I mean, I guess a cure for DID is merging into a single being. And in that case, yes, both myself and Autumn have both cured ourselves of DID in that sense. It's just the merge pretty much is the cure, I guess.
Okay. And I know a lot of people with a DID are very offended by the idea of merging because they don't want to merge. So, what are your thoughts on that?
It kind of just goes with the speech I made a minute ago. If you guys were meant to merge, then you will. If you guys weren't meant to merge and
Mhm.
we're just going to share the wheel, then that's what will happen. Everything will be the way it is meant to be. Destiny's got this.
Okay. So, if mostly the cure is to merge, yet someone is in resistance to this and they don't want to, do you think they could be cured essentially with still having these ultra personalities and the dissociation?
Well, that's exactly what happened with me, Autumn. I did not want to merge.
Yeah.
I did not. And I was very upset when it was happening and after it was done. And it took me one full solid year to accept it and come to terms with it and say that I'm okay with this. So, yeah, I mean, it just kind of merging is, I feel weird using the word too, but merging is the cure for DID. And, if it's meant to happen, it's going to. If one alter or the original has decided they've had enough and they don't want to exist anymore, they have that opportunity to merge into whatever's more powerful than they are.
Great. So thank you, Molly, for that question. Jade asks here, Bad Girl, do you feel at peace now that you know who you are?
Definitely. I definitely feel at peace. And, I now look at it. My twin brother, he was not murdered. He did not commit suicide. He is where he's always wanted to be. He is a part of me, therefore he's the person he's always wanted to be since he was a child.
That's great. And that kind of ties into the next question here by Elisa. Do you ever think those alters are still there hidden, but instead of a negative, it's brought about a positive?
First off, I'm wondering if this is my personal friend, Elisa. Are you that Elisa?
No, it's Lisa, Lisa.
Lisa. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Do you think that these alters are still there hidden, but instead of a negative, it's brought out as positive?
No, he's gone. My twin brother isn't here anymore. He now exists as a part of me, as the part of me that wants to care for others, the part of me that wants to be nice and civilized. He's the part that is not angry. Okay, I still get angry.
Mm-hmm.
I still have my little if I'm pushed far enough, I will get angry and I will kind of go off on you. And I do have an original side still. I can still get to my old angry, vengeful habits if I'm pushed far enough. But because of this merge, because of him, it takes a lot more to get me there than what it used to. And that's the part of me that I recognize as being him. So no, he's as a separation, he's gone. He's no longer an individual. He now exists as part of me. And I recognize what part of me it is.
Okay. That is wonderful and wonderful to hear. Now, I've answered this question before, but I will let you answer it. It's a very silly one by Vivian here. I think other people have asked it. What should we think about your ties to the alt-right?
Ties to the what?
What should we think about your ties to the alt-right?
What the hell is that?
Well, if you're looking at like politically, the left and the right, Democrat, Republican, people ask me, what are my ties to the alt-right, which is usually this group that is very, it's labeled as, these. I don't really know how to describe it, but people ask me that.
They're pretty much asking my Democrat or Republican.
Not really. I think it's much deeper than that, but sure, you can answer it like that.
That's how I'm understanding it. If I'm getting this totally wrong, I apologize, but I am definitely a Democrat. I'm a
Okay.
Democrat, I am a liberal, and I hate our president.
Okay. Okay. Let's see what else we got here. Zachariah asks, what is something positive about DID?
It can definitely get you through some really, really tough times. Just having an imaginary friend that can help you through the difficult times where you feel insecure and alone, having someone there all the time means you are never alone. And that's what's the great thing about an imaginary friend or an alter, if it gets to that point, is just you are never alone. You always have someone to talk to. And I think that is definitely the most positive aspect.
Great. Jennifer here asks, when you merged, did you decide to get rid of the name you have beginning? Hang on. When you merged, did you decide to get rid of the name you have beginning in E? I'm not sure what E is, but
I've never had a name beginning with E.
okay.
I mean,
Maybe it's just a typo, or I'm not understanding it.
I can still answer that. It's
Yes.
just I don't know where you're getting E from. My twin brother, the original, his name was Chris, and my name is Jacqueline.
Mm-hmm.
Bad Girl is my YouTube name. That's only on my channel that I go by Bad Girl.
Bad Girl.
But,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but my actual first name is Jacqueline. So, and that is what I go by. So no, I definitely do not go by Chris because that's not my name. That was my brother's name, and he's not here anymore. So my name is Jacqueline.
Okay. Let's say, how did you find your personal style?
Well, as I stated, I, the alter, was spawned from anger, and I found the goth style very, very appealing because many people of media, just kind of like the general population is a better way to word it. The general population kind of finds the goth style to be intimidating, and because so many people made my twin brother feel afraid, I wanted to strike fear in them. And so right away, I wanted to look intimidating. So that's why I immediately chose the goth style as my personal look, because I wanted to intimidate. And even though that's not my intention anymore, my goal is not to intimidate or be scary, I still like it. It stuck with me just because I really like the color black. I really like dyeing my hair split color a lot. And, I really enjoy the makeup. It's just a look that I really personally enjoy.
Okay. Iris Fake asks, what should we think about your ties to the alt-right?
Did we just do this?
Yeah. People ask this a lot.
Democrat. Okay, I already said that. I don't know what alt-right. I gotta Google that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, it's see, that's the thing. I don't know. They're probably asking me. They've asked me plenty of times. I've given them an answer. My answer, I don't, I give a very, very silly, interesting response to them because it's like, okay.
All right, my response is, I think we should all bow down to the spaghetti monster.
Okay, I think there are quite a few things here. I'm just going to go find one more good one here. Okay. All right, so here is one a little bit different topic here, but I think it's one good one to end at. Do either of you have any physical disorders like asthma?
I do have mild asthma. It was a lot worse as a child. Like, my twin brother had it a lot worse than I do. It's kind of carried over into me a little bit, but primarily it's just when I get really, really nervous. Like, I'm a dancer, And whenever like I have a new routine or like I'm about to perform for a very large and new audience, I get super nervous, and that's when I need to whip out my inhalers because I can't breathe. So yes, I do have mild asthma, but it takes extreme conditions to trigger it.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of have somewhat of a similar issue where I have this constriction in my chest, and it feels like I can't breathe as deeply. And I've certainly found things that have helped, but nothing's ever really fully gotten rid of it. And I've noticed it's mostly due to like mucus buildup there, and I don't know how to get rid of that. 'Cause there are certain exercises that I can do to help alleviate it, and I pretty much have to do them before I exercise, or else I will be like if I go out running in the morning and I don't do that, I have like a lot of the wheezing, and it's a bit harder to breathe, and I don't really know what's causing that because I've been tested for everything and nothing has shown up for it, but I mean, it's just like some kind of mucus I can't get rid of. But other than that, the only kind of physical problems that I have are, I don't know, probably a lot because I have like a chronic pain, I have a curved spine, I have a lot of other pain related issues. So I just try to manage it the best that I can. So
Yeah, for me, that's the most difficult thing about us being clear across the country from one another. Because I'm just like, wifey needs hugs, and I can't reach her. Wifey needs me.
okay. So well, this will be the last one that we end on because it ties into what we just said here. Well, what you just answered. Are you a Alice S? Are you a professional dancer, or what is your career?
I do a combination. I do enjoy traditional theater. I just finished a production of Hairspray last month, and that was super fun. I also perform striptease. I also perform celebrity impersonation. I do 4 celebrities, actually 5, but 4 of them I do regularly. The 5th one is kind of like super special occasion. The 4 I do regularly are Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, Sia, and Melanie Martinez. The 5th one is satire and requires a very specific show to do, Melania Trump. So yeah, but I mean, it was like an all political show, and we had the coordinator of the show impersonating Donald Trump. So I was his wife, and I tried to kill him on stage. It was great. But yeah, let's see, and also, is that performing? I guess it's kind of performing. Yeah, I'm gonna say it. The last kind of performing that I do is I'm a dominatrix. So I guess, and that is performing because I'm kind of like digging deep and finding that angry, violent nature back, and that does require a little bit of acting now. So yeah, it counts.
Interesting. Well, thank you for sharing all this, and I thank you for coming on here so we can have a chat about this. And I thank everyone who tuned in. I think it was a great conversation. I think we definitely had a lot of unique views and expressed a lot of things. And there were probably the most questions I've ever seen of any chat. So this was a lot of good questions. So
Yeah.
thank you for everyone for tuning in. You can check her out. There's a link in the description. You can just search up Bad Girl. I think she'll come out in the search results. And yeah,
very important. Make sure you write Bad Girls 'S bitch blog. That apostrophe is very important.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I guess Bad Girls I think is something else. So
yeah.
All right. So thank you for coming on, and I will talk to you all later. So bye-bye.